The ship floated in the endless dark, like a dead whale in an ocean of stars. Captain Vextar stared through the viewing screen at the strange metal hull that his crew had found 3 days ago. The vessel was huge, bigger than anything the Catherians had ever built, but it was completely silent. No power readings, no life signs, nothing. "How old do you think it is?" asked Dr. Zillanara as she joined him at the window. Her blue skin had that pale tint it always got when she was excited about a new discovery. "The metal shows deep space weathering," Vextar replied, his long fingers tapping against the control panel. "Maybe 500 years, maybe more." "You're sure it's human?" "The design matches the old records. This is definitely one of their early colony ships." He turned to look at her. "The question is why it's here, so far from any known human settlement." Dr. Zillanara had been studying humans for most of her career. They were such interesting creatures, so different from other species. Most races that achieved spaceflight did so through careful planning and slow advancement. Humans had literally fled their dying world in whatever ships they could build, scattering across the galaxy like seeds in the wind. "Permission to board?" she asked. Vextar hesitated. Security Chief Korvax had already warned him 3 times about the dangers of exploring unknown vessels. But his curiosity won over his caution. "Take a team, but be careful." 2 hours later, Dr. Zillanara was floating through the dark corridors of the human ship. Her helmet light cut through the blackness as she moved deeper into the vessel. The ship was cold, colder than space itself. Ice crystals covered the walls like frozen tears. "The main power core is completely dead," reported her assistant, Dr. Maltic. "Has been for centuries." "Then how are we getting those energy readings from the lower decks?" she asked. They followed the faint power signature down through twisting corridors and past rooms filled with strange human equipment. Everything was built for creatures much larger than the modern humans they knew. The ceilings were higher, the doorways wider, even the chairs looked like they were made for giants. Doctor called out Specialist Nixvar from up ahead. "You need to see this." She found him standing before a massive door marked with human writing. The symbols were in the old language, the one that modern human colonies barely remembered. But Dr. Zillanara had studied it for years. "Cryo Bay 7, she read aloud. "This is it. This is where the power is coming from." The door opened with a grinding sound that echoed through the empty ship. Inside, rows of white pods stretched into the darkness. Most were open, their lids thrown back like the mouths of hungry beasts. Few were closed but dark, their occupants long dead. But at the far end of the room, one pod glowed with soft blue light. "Incredible," whispered Dr. Zillanara as she approached the active pod. "After all these years, one of them is still alive." Through the clear cover, she could see a human male. He looked to be in his 30s, with dark hair and the kind of muscled build that modern humans never seemed to have. His face was peaceful, almost boyish in sleep. "The medical readings are amazing," said Dr. Maltic, checking his scanner. "His body is in perfect condition. Heart rate slow, but steady. Brain activity shows he's in deep cryosleep, not dead." Dr. Zillanara ran her own scans. This human was different from the ones she knew. His bone density was higher, his muscle mass greater, even in sleep. He looked dangerous in a way that modern humans did not. "What's his name?" she asked, finding the pod's information display still functioning on backup power. "Jake Miller," Dr. Maltic read from his translator, former military engineer. "Age 34 when he entered cryosleep. Military." Dr. Zillanara felt a chill. That had nothing to do with the cold ship. Modern humans were peaceful traders and farmers. They had no military to speak of. The galactic community had made sure of that. "Should we wake him?" asked Dr. Molstecht, back on the Zenith Dawn. Captain Vextar listened to Dr. Zillanara's report with growing interest. A living human from the old days, from before the galactic community had found and guided them. It was the discovery of a lifetime. "Sir," said Security Chief Korvax, his red eyes glowing with concern. "I don't think this is wise. We don't know anything about humans from that time period. They could be dangerous." "1 human against a crew of 50? Vextar laughed. "What could he'd possibly do? The old records suggest they were more violent than modern humans, Korvax insisted. There are stories of wars, of terrible weapons. That's why the Council worked so hard to guide them toward peace. Stories, Vexstar waved a hand dismissively. Besides, think of what we could learn. This human is from before the guidance programs. We could study how humans were before we helped them become civilized. Dr. Zillanara felt her excitement growing. The research possibilities are endless. We could understand human development in ways never before possible. He might have information about other lost colony ships, added Vexstar. Ships that might still be drifting out there, filled with ancient human technology. Security Chief Korvax looked around the room at the eager faces of his shipmates. He could see that his warnings were falling on deaf ears. They had already decided. If we do this, he said slowly, I want full security measures. Armed guards, containment fields, the works. Of course, agreed Vexstar. But I don't think we'll need them. How dangerous could one confused ancient human be? 3 days later, the transfer was complete. Jake Miller's cryopod had been moved to the medical bay of the Zenith Dawn, connected. To their more advanced life support systems, Dr. Zillanara had run every test she could think of. Confirming that the human could be safely awakened, his genetic markers are fascinating, she told the gathered officers.
Oh, this is what humans looked like before centuries of galactic integration. Beam!
Stronger, more aggressive, but also more adaptable. Begin the awakening process, ordered Captain Vexstar. The machines hummed to life, warming the ancient human's body. Bringing him slowly back from his 500-year sleep, his heartbeat grew stronger, his breathing deeper. Brain activity spiked as his mind began to work again. Jake Miller's eyes opened for the first time in centuries. They were sharp and alert, scanning the room with the quick efficiency of a predator. When he spoke, his voice was rough from disuse, but clear. Where am I? He asked in the old human tongue. Dr. Zillanara activated her translator. You're safe. She said in basic human language, You've been asleep for a very long time. Jake's eyes found hers, and she felt something cold settle in her stomach. This human was nothing like the ones she had studied. Behind his confusion, she could see a sharp intelligence working, analyzing, calculating. How long? He asked. 500 years, she replied. Jake was quiet for a long moment, absorbing this information. Then he smiled, and somehow, that smile was more frightening than anger would have been. I see, he said quietly. And what happened to Earth? Jake Miller sat on the edge of the medical bed, his legs dangling over the side like a child's. But there was nothing childlike about the way his eyes moved around the room, cataloging every detail, every exit, every potential weapon. Dr. Zillanara pretended to read her medical reports while watching him through her peripheral vision. Earth is gone, she said softly, trying to keep her voice gentle. The sun expanded just as your scientists predicted. But humanity survived. There are colonies scattered across dozens of star systems now. Jake nodded slowly. How many people? Made it out? Millions? Maybe billions. Your species has done very well for itself. She paused, choosing her words carefully. The galactic community has been very helpful in guiding human development. Something flickered in Jake's eyes at the word guiding. It was there and gone so quickly that Dr. Zillanara almost missed it. Guiding? He asked, his voice neutral. Oh, yes. When humans first spread across the galaxy, they were. Well, they had many problems. Wars between colonies, dangerous experiments, aggressive expansion. The Galactic Council stepped in to help maintain peace. I see. Jake's smile never reached his eyes. And humans agreed to this help, of course? Once they understood the benefits of cooperation, they were very grateful. Jake was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. They were larger than modern human hands, Dr. Zillanara noticed, scarred from years of work and fighting. When he looked up again, his expression was perfectly pleasant. Could I see some of these colonies? Maybe talk to other humans? Eventually, yes. But first, we'd like to run some more tests. You're a remarkable specimen, Jake. The last of your kind, really. Modern humans are quite different. Different how? Dr. Zillanara hesitated. She had been studying humans for decades, but explaining the differences to one of the originals was tricky. How did you tell someone that their entire species had been deliberately changed? Smaller, mostly, more peaceful. Better adapted to space travel and colony life. The old human aggression has been ... refined. Jake repeated the word like he was tasting something bitter. You mean bred out of them? I wouldn't put it that way. Evolution is a natural process. Humans simply adapted to their new environment. With help, with guidance, yes. Over the following days, Jake proved to be a model patient. He submitted to Dr. Zillanara's tests without complaint, answered her questions politely, and seemed genuinely interested in learning about the current state of the galaxy. But Security Chief Korvax wasn't fooled. He's watching us, Korvax reported to Captain Vexstar during their daily briefing. Every guard rotation, every corridor we take him through, every system we show him, he's memorizing everything. He's curious about his new environment, Vexstar dismissed. Wouldn't you be? This isn't curiosity, sir. This is reconnaissance. Captain. Vexstar sighed. Korvax had been jumpy ever since they'd brought the human aboard. He's one man, Chief. An ancient man who's been asleep for 5 centuries. What possible threat could he be? But Korvax had read the old files, the ones most people preferred to forget. Before the guidance programs, humans had been something else entirely. They'd built weapons that could crack planets. They'd fought wars that lasted generations. They had been apex predators wearing the mask of civilization, Jake. Meanwhile was learning things that Dr. Zillanara never intended to teach him. During his daily walks through the ship, he observed crew rotations, noted security procedures, and identified critical systems. When he asked innocent questions about human colonies, he was really mapping out the extent of alien control. The colonies all have Galactic Council advisors, he asked during one of their sessions. Of course, to help with trade agreements, technology transfers, that sort of thing. And they live on the colonies permanently? Yes, they're fully integrated into human society. Many of them have been there for generations. Jake nodded thoughtfully. What about human military forces? Dr. Zillanara looked surprised. Military. Humans don't have military forces anymore. There's no need. The Council maintains peace throughout the galaxy. No human ships, no defense forces. Well, there are some patrol vessels for asteroid mining and such, but nothing that could be called military. Why would humans need weapons when they live under Council protection? That night, Jake lay in his quarters, staring at the ceiling. Through careful questioning, he had pieced together a picture that made his blood run cold. Humanity had been conquered so completely that they didn't even know they were slaves. Every human colony had alien overseers. Human technology was controlled and limited. Human expansion was carefully managed. Even human reproduction was monitored through medical assistance programs that ensured each generation was smaller, weaker, and more docile than the last. The worst part was that they seemed grateful for it. 2 weeks into his recovery, Jake overheard something that changed everything. He had been walking past the communications center when he caught fragments of a conversation between Captain Vexstar and someone on the other end of a secure channel. ... Specimen is remarkable. It's a genetic baseline from before modification programs. Council Research Division, very interested. Recommend immediate transfer to Facility 7. Jake kept walking, his face showing no emotion. But inside, something cold and sharp was taking shape. He wasn't a rescued survivor. He was a laboratory animal. That evening, Dr. Zillanara noticed changes in his test results. His brain activity had spiked, his stress hormones were elevated, and there was something in his expression that hadn't been there before. Are you feeling all right, Jake? She asked. Just thinking about home, he replied with that same pleasant smile. About Earth, you must miss it terribly. I miss a lot of things. He looked directly at her. I miss the way humans used to be. Something in his tone made her uncomfortable. What do you mean, free? He said simply. I miss when humans were free. Dr. Zillanara felt a chill run down her spine. The way he said it, the look in his eyes, suddenly made her remember all of Security Chief Korvax's warnings. Humans are free now, she said carefully. freer than they've ever been. No more wars, no more suffering, no more of the terrible mistakes of the past. Jake was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was very soft. You really believe that, don't you? You actually think you saved us? We did save you. From yourselves, if nothing else. Jake nodded slowly, as if she had just confirmed something he had suspected. Doctor, can I ask you something? Of course. In all your studies of humans and all your research and observation, have you ever wondered what we were running from? When we left Earth, the question caught her off guard. You're running from? You were fleeing your dying son? No, Jake said, his smile finally disappearing. We weren't running from our dying son. We were running to something. We were explorers, conquerors, survivors. We left Earth because we refused to die quietly. He stood up, and for the first time Dr. Zillanara noticed how much larger he was than modern humans. How much stronger. You didn't save us from ourselves. Doctor, you saved yourselves from us, and now you're about to remember why. Jake lay in his quarters, listening to the ship's rhythm. He had been aboard for 3 weeks now, long enough to learn the patterns. The crew change happened every 8 hours. The security patrol walked past his door every 30 minutes. Night shift was smaller, lazier. He had also learned that Dr. Zillanara kept her research files in her personal quarters, and that Captain Vexstar believed him to be a harmless curiosity. Most importantly, he had learned that tomorrow they would arrive at something called Research Station Alpha, where he would be transferred for extended study. The communication he had overheard that morning made everything clear. He wasn't going to any human colony. He was going to a laboratory where they would take him apart piece by piece to understand how to better control his species. Jake sat up on his bed and began to stretch. His body felt good, better than it had in years before. The cryo sleep. 5 centuries of rest had healed old injuries and left him in perfect condition. He rolled his shoulders and felt the familiar weight of muscle and bone that modern humans seemed to lack. The first guard change happened at midnight. Jake heard the soft footsteps in the corridor, the quiet exchange of words, then silence. He waited exactly 15 minutes, then stood and walked to his door. The lock was electronic, designed to keep curious humans safely inside their quarters. But Jake had been an engineer before he was a soldier, and these aliens had made a crucial mistake. They had given him 3 weeks to study their technology. The door opened with barely a whisper of sound. The corridor outside was dimly lit, designed for alien eyes that worked better in low light than human ones. But Jake's eyes had been trained to work in the dark spaces of Earth's underground bunkers and the black tunnels of mining colonies. He moved like a shadow, keeping close to the walls. His first stop was the maintenance access panel he had noticed during his walks. The aliens had shown him around their ship with the pride of parents showing off to a child. They had explained their systems, their backups, their safety protocols. They had given him a complete blueprint of how to destroy them. Jake opened the panel and began to work. His fingers moved with the confidence of someone who had spent years building and breaking complex machines. Within minutes, he had rerouted power from non-essential systems to the areas he needed. The ship's lights dimmed slightly, and the engine room warning indicators began to flash. But the night shift engineer was reading alien poetry and didn't notice. Jake's next target was the communications array. He moved through the ship like a ghost, avoiding the patrol routes he had memorized, using service corridors that the aliens never bothered to guard. When he reached the communications center, he found it empty, except for one technician who was half asleep at his station. The alien never saw him coming. Jake's hand closed over the creature's mouth, while his other arm locked around the thin neck. He applied pressure to the correct spots, and the technician went limp. Not dead, just unconscious. Jake had decided early on that he wouldn't kill unless he had to. These aliens thought they were helping humanity. They were wrong, but they weren't evil. Some of them, anyway. With the communications array under his control, Jake began to access the ship's database. His fingers flew over the alien controls as he downloaded everything he could find about human colonies. Alien oversight programs, and something called the Human Management Protocol. What he read made his jaw clench with rage. The aliens hadn't just conquered humanity. They had done it so slowly, so carefully, that humans had thanked them for it. Generation by generation, they had weakened the human gene pool. Colony by colony, they had removed human independence. World by world, they had turned a race of explorers and fighters into a race of grateful servants, and they had done it all while calling it salvation. Jake copied the files to a portable storage device, then began his real work. He uploaded a virus he had been designing in his head for the past 3 weeks. It was simple, elegant, and completely invisible to alien security systems. Because it was based on human logic patterns that the aliens had never bothered to study, the virus spread through the ship's network like wildfire, systematically shutting down backup systems, locking out security protocols, and creating cascading failures that would take hours to trace and days to repair. By the time the first alarm sounded, Jake was already 3 decks away. Security Chief Korvax was having his worst nightmare come true. He ran through the corridors of his ship, watching as system after system failed around him. The lights flickered, the gravity generators hummed ominously, and the air recycling system began making sounds it had never made before. "Where is he?" Korvax shouted into his communicator. "Can't find him, sir," came the panicked reply. "He's not in his quarters. He's not in the medical bay. It's like he just vanished. Humans don't just vanish. Search every room, every corridor, every maintenance shaft." But Jake was already 10 steps ahead of them. While they searched the upper decks, he was in the lower levels, systematically destroying their ability to call for help. While they tried to restore their security systems, he was sabotaging their engines. While they attempted to lock down the ship, he was turning their own safety protocols against them. Dr. Zillanara found herself trapped in her laboratory. When the security doors locked down, she could hear alarms throughout the ship, could see the flashing warning lights, but she couldn't understand what was happening. Then Jake appeared at her laboratory window. He was different now. Gone was the pleasant, confused ancient human who had asked polite questions about his new world. In his place stood something that made her species. Evolutionary memories scream warnings about apex predators and ancient terrors. "Hello, Doctor," Jake said through the intercom. His voice was calm, almost friendly. "I thought you might want to see what an unmodified human is capable of." "Jake, please," she said, her voice shaking. "Whatever you're doing, we can work this out. We can talk. We did talk. For 3 weeks. You told me all about how you saved my species." He smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Now I'm going to show you what you saved them from." The laboratory lights went out, plunging her into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in red light that made Jake look like something from an ancient nightmare. "You see, Doctor, you made one crucial mistake. You studied modern humans, the ones you had already broken. But you never studied what humans were like when they were whole." Through the red-lit window, Dr. Zillanara could see Jake's eyes. They were not the eyes of a civilized being. They were the eyes of something that had evolved to hunt, to fight, to survive against impossible odds. "We didn't leave Earth because our sun was dying," Jake continued conversationally. "We left Earth because we refused to accept extinction. We looked at a dying world and said no. We built ships with our bare hands, launched ourselves into the unknown, and scattered across the galaxy because we would rather die trying than die waiting." He pressed his hand against the window. Dr. Zillanara could see the scars on his palm, the calluses from years of hard work and harder fighting. "You took that away from us. You made us forget what we were. But I remember, Doctor, I remember what it means to be human." The lights went out completely, and in the darkness, Dr. Zillanara heard Jake's voice one last time. "And now, I'm going to remind them." Captain Vexstar crouched behind an overturned table in what used to be his own ship's dining hall. Around him, his crew huddled in the darkness, their eyes wide with terror. The emergency lights cast everything in blood-red shadows, and every sound made them jump. "Sir," whispered Communications Officer Plexra, "I managed to get a message to the nearest council station. Help is coming." "How long?" Vexstar asked. 18 hours, minimum. 18 hours. Vexstar closed his eyes. They'd been playing this deadly game of hide-and-seek with Jake Miller for 6 hours now. And already half his crew was unconscious, trapped, or too terrified to move. 18 more hours might as well be 18 years. "Where is he now?" asked Dr. Maltic, Dr. Zillinara's assistant, who had escaped when Jake sealed the laboratory levels. "We don't know," Security Chief Korvax admitted, his voice hollow with defeat. "He's not showing up on any of our sensors. It's like he's a ghost." But Jake wasn't a ghost. He was in the ventilation system directly above them, listening to every word. He had been moving through the ship's service tunnels for hours, appearing wherever he wanted, vanishing before they could respond. The aliens had designed their ship for comfort and efficiency. They had never considered that someone might use their own systems against them. Jake dropped silently from a ceiling vent into the storage room next to the dining hall. His movements were fluid, practiced. On Earth, he had learned to move through the collapsed subway tunnels beneath dying cities. This alien ship was luxury compared to those dark, twisted spaces. He had a plan now, born from 6 hours of careful observation. These aliens weren't soldiers. They were scientists, explorers, diplomats, had grown soft living in their carefully controlled galaxy where violence was managed and conflict was resolved through committees. They had no idea how to fight a war. Jake activated the ship's internal communication system from a wall panel. His voice echoed through every corridor, every room, every hiding place on the ship. "Captain Vexstar," he said calmly, "I think it's time we had a proper conversation." In the dining hall, the aliens pressed closer together. Vexstar's hands shook as he activated his communicator. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want you to understand something," Jake replied. "For the past 6 hours, I've been playing with you. I could have killed every one of you by now. Your ship's life support, your gravity generators, your reactor. Containment, I control all of it." Dr. Zillinara's voice came through the communicator from her sealed laboratory. "Jake, please. We never meant to hurt anyone. We were trying to help." Jake's laugh echoed through the ship, cold and bitter. "Help, you keep using that word. Let me tell you what your help actually accomplished." He activated the ship's main display screens throughout the vessel. The files he had stolen from their database began to scroll past reports. Statistics, genetic modification records, population control measures, colony designation, New Boston. Population reduced by 30% over 50 years through medical interventions. Genetic markers for aggression suppressed by 97%. The aliens stared at the screens in growing horror as Jake continued reading. Colony designation. Liberty Station. All military equipment removed under safety protocols. Population relocated to smaller facilities for better resource management. Current status, fully compliant. "Jake," Captain Vexstar's voice was pleading now. "You have to understand. Humans were dangerous. Before our guidance, your species was constantly at war. You were destroying yourselves." "We were evolving," Jake corrected. "We were growing stronger, smarter, more capable, and you decided that was inconvenient for your neat little galaxy." Jake appeared on the dining hall's doorway like a shadow made flesh. The alien scrambled backward, but there was nowhere to go. He stood there calmly, his hands empty, his posture relaxed. Somehow that made him more frightening than if he had been holding a weapon. "Here's what's going to happen," he said conversationally. "You're all going to go to the main cargo bay. You're going to sit quietly while I explain some things to you. And then you're going to help me fix what you've broken." "And if we refuse?" Security Chief Korvax asked, trying to sound braver than he felt. Jake smiled. "Then I stopped playing games." Demonstrate his point, the lights went out completely. In the absolute darkness, the aliens heard movement, felt the air shift around them, sensed something dangerous moving just beyond their reach. When the lights came back on 30 seconds later, Jake was gone, but Security Chief Korvax was unconscious. On the floor, a small dart in his neck. "Sleeping drug." Jake's voice came from somewhere in the walls. "We'll be fine in a few hours. But I could have used something else." One by one, the surviving crew made their way to the cargo bay. They found Jake waiting for them, sitting casually on a supply crate like he was hosting a friendly meeting. Dr. Zillinara was already there, released from her laboratory prison. "Sit down," Jake said pleasantly. "It's story time, Captain Vexstar. looked around the cargo bay. 17 members of his crew, out of 50. The others were unconscious, trapped, or hiding in sealed compartments throughout the ship. "You want to know what humans were like before your help?" Jake asked. "We were builders, turned a dead rock into a garden. We were explorers. Reached for the stars before we could barely reach our own moon. We were survivors. We looked at extinction and said, 'Not today.'" He stood up and began to pace, his movements precise and controlled. "But most importantly, we were adaptable. Could throw anything at us. War, famine, plague, natural disasters, and we would find a way to overcome it. That's what made us dangerous to your perfect little galactic order. You were chaotic." Dr. Zillanara protested weakly. "Unpredictable. You fought constantly. We competed," Jake corrected. "Competition made us stronger. Conflict taught us to innovate. Struggle forced us to grow." He stopped pacing and looked directly at her. "Took all of that away. You turned us into pets. Grateful, obedient, harmless pets who think their cage is paradise." Jake walked to the cargo bay's main display and activated it. Star charts appeared, showing human colonies scattered across dozens of systems. "But here's the thing about humans that you never understood," he said, his voice growing harder. "We don't stay caged." His fingers danced over the controls, and the display changed to show communication networks' data pathways. Information flows between human colonies and alien oversight stations. "I've been uploading data to every human colony in known space for the past 3 hours. Technical specifications, historical records, genetic information. Everything you've been hiding from them." Captain Vexstar felt his blood turn to ice. "What kind of information?" Jake's smile was sharp as a blade. "The kind that reminds them what they used to be. The kind that shows them what you've done to them. The kind that teaches them how to break the chains you've wrapped around their minds." Dr. Zillanara was shaking now. "You don't understand what you've done. If humans return to their old ways, there will be chaos, war, destruction." "Maybe," Jake agreed. "But it will be our chaos, our war, our choice." He turned back to the display, showing colony after colony receiving his transmissions. "You made one fatal mistake when you decided to manage my species," Jake said quietly. "You forgot that the most dangerous thing about humans isn't our strength or our weapons or our aggression." The display zoomed in on a colony called New Haven, where lights were beginning to flicker in patterns that hadn't been seen for centuries. Communication codes, rally signals, calls to arms. "The most dangerous thing about humans," Jake continued, "is that we learn." 3 months later, Jake Miller stood on the observation deck of the colony ship New Dawn, watching the planet New Haven grow larger in the viewport. The ship had once belonged to the Galactic Council, but now it flew under human command. Jake had made sure of that. Behind him, the bridge buzzed with activity as the crew prepared for orbital insertion. These weren't the soft, compliant humans the aliens had expected to find. In just 3 months, Jake's broadcasts had awakened. Something that had been sleeping in human genetics for centuries. "Sir," called out Navigation Officer Pete Adams, "we're receiving multiple signals from the surface. Some are welcoming us, others are." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Less friendly." Jake nodded. He had expected this. Not every human colony had embraced the information he had shared. Some had been living under alien oversight for so many generations that they genuinely believed it was for their own good. Others were simply afraid of change. But enough had listened. Enough had remembered. "Take us into standard orbit," Jake ordered, "and open a channel to the surface." The main screen flickered to life, showing a woman in her 40s with graying hair and tired eyes. Mayor Lisa Brooks looked exactly like what she was, a career politician who had spent her life managing a peaceful, prosperous colony under alien guidance. "Mr. Miller," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "Mayor Brooks, thank you for agreeing to speak with me. I didn't have much choice, did I? Half my population is in the streets demanding answers about your ... revelations. The other half is terrified that you're going to start a war." Jake could see the conflict in her eyes. She was a product of the system the aliens had created. Intelligent, capable, but trained to seek compromise and avoid confrontation. She genuinely wanted what was best for her people, but she had no framework for understanding what that might be in a world without alien oversight. "I'm not here to start a war, Mayor. I'm here to offer a choice." "What kind of choice?" Jake gestured. To someone off-screen, and a younger woman stepped into view. Amy Brooks, the mayor's daughter, was 23 years old and had been one of the first to respond to Jake's broadcasts. Unlike her mother, she had the look of someone who had discovered they were stronger than they ever imagined. "Mom," Amy said, "you need to see what we've learned, what we've remembered." Over the next hour, Jake and Amy showed Mayor Brooks the truth about human history. Not the sanitized version the aliens had taught, but the real story of a species that had clawed its way up from primitive hunters to start traveling explorers in just a few thousand years. They showed her the genetic records, proving how alien medical assistants had systematically weakened human capabilities generation by generation. They demonstrated the technology that humans had been developing before the aliens intervened. Technology that was centuries ahead of what the colonies were allowed to have now. Most importantly, they showed her what was happening on other worlds. Where humans had embraced their heritage, Colony 7 threw out their Galactic Council advisors last month, Amy explained, pulling up communication logs on the display. They've already restarted their industrial base and begun developing new ships. Colony 12 discovered that their mining accidents were actually sabotage designed to keep them dependent on alien technology. Mayor Brooks watched the reports with growing amazement and horror. But the advisors said these restrictions were for our own safety, to prevent another war like the ones that nearly destroyed Earth. "There were no wars that nearly destroyed Earth," Jake said quietly. "Earth was dying because our sun was expanding. The wars the aliens talk about were small conflicts between nations, nothing that threatened our entire species. But that's what they told you to make you grateful for their protection." He pulled up another file, this one showing population and development statistics from before alien contact. In the 50 years before your advisors arrived, human colonies expanded to 30 star systems. In the 200 years since, you've been allowed to settle only 12 more. Before their guidance, human technology advanced by leaps and bounds. Every decade since then, you've been using the same basic systems for generations. "They've been holding us back," Amy added, "making sure we stayed weak enough to control, but useful enough to exploit." Mayor Brooks was quiet for a long time. Studying the data, she finally spoke. Her voice was small and tired. "What do you want from us?" "I want to give you a choice," Jake replied. "You can continue as you are, living under alien oversight, safe and comfortable and limited. Or you can choose to remember what humans are capable of. And if we choose to remember?" Jake smiled, and for the first time since she had met him, it was a genuinely warm expression. "Then we teach you. I'm not the only one, Mayor. There are other ships out there, other humans from the old days who are starting to wake up. We remember the skills your people have forgotten. Engineering, tactics, innovation, the kind of problem-solving that doesn't accept impossible as an answer." Amy stepped forward. "Mom, I've been learning from the technical manuals Jake broadcast. Did you know that the power generators we use could be improved by 70% with modifications the aliens have forbidden? Did you know our ships could go 3 times faster if we weren't limited to safe engine designs?" "But why?" Mayor Brooks asked. "Why would they do this to us?" "'Cause they were afraid," Jake answered. "The galaxy is a big place, full of dangers. They couldn't control or eliminate, but humans were unpredictable. We didn't follow their rules, didn't fit into their neat categories, so they decided to make us fit." He walked to the viewport, looking down at the world below. "They turned us into what they thought we should be, instead of letting us become what we could be." Mayor Brooks joined him at the window. Below them, New Haven sprawled across the continent, a neat, orderly, prosperous world where humans lived comfortable, limited lives. "If we do this," she said slowly, "if we choose to change, what happens to people like me? People who don't know how to be what humans used to be." "You learn," Jake said simply. "The same way every human has learned for thousands of years. You try, you fail, you get back up, and you try again. That's what makes us human. And if the aliens try to stop us, Jake's expression hardened. Then they'll discover that the most dangerous human isn't the one who remembers how to fight. It's the one who remembers how to learn. 3 days later, Mayor Lisa Brooks stood before the colony assembly and made her choice. She announced that New Haven would be ending its oversight agreement with the Galactic Council and beginning the long process of reclaiming human independence. The vote wasn't unanimous. Nearly 30% of the population chose to relocate to colonies that maintained alien oversight, but 70% decided to stay and discover what they could become. Jake established a training center in the colony's industrial district. Every day, men and women came to learn skills their grandparents had forgotten. Amy Brooks became one of his best students, showing an aptitude for engineering that would have been impossible under alien genetic modification programs. But the real changes weren't in the technology or the politics. They were in the people themselves. As they learned what they were capable of, as they rediscovered the human capacity for growth and adaptation, something fundamental shifted in their expression, their posture, their view of the future. They stopped looking to the sky for guidance and started looking to themselves for solutions and across the galaxy. On dozens of other worlds, similar awakenings were beginning. The word spread from colony to colony, carried by traders, explorers, and refugees from the growing conflict between human independence and alien control. Jake had kept his promise. God reminded humanity what they used to be. Now it was up to them to decide what they would become.